Welcome. This is Money Heart, where we explore the emotional side of money. I'm Camille Diaz, and today we're discussing practical money lessons for kids. My guest is Samia Pedalino. She's the author of Money Handbook, Spiritual Keys and Practical Steps to Finance. Samia is an author and communicator with a passion to help you learn how to manage money and connect your faith to your finances. Raised in a traditional Jewish home in sunny South Florida, she carries a deep value for stewarding kingdom finances. With her experience in finance and banking industry, and later as a successful business owner, Samia shares her wisdom and knowledge from both biblical and a practical perspective. Samia, welcome to Money Heart.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am so glad you're here. And this is a great topic because I think we talk a lot about how to steward money as adults and, how all of the things that we're going to do in our business and our lives with money. And we don't always think about how am I going to teach my kids to talk about money and deal with money and all of that stuff. And generational wealth is one of my favorite concepts to discuss and kind of nerd out on. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of generational wealth?
Yeah, absolutely. So generational wealth is something that's really important to put in place for your family. And I always give the example of like the biblical version of generational wealth, which was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they were like our very first example of what that even was. Mm-hmm. And it's just really beautiful to see because Abraham, it says he was rich in gold and silver and in livestock. And then Isaac had even more than him. And then Jacob had even more than him. So it wasn't just that they each, like when it was being passed down, had the same amount. It was like multiplying. So with generational wealth, it's like the principle of sowing and reaping, where as it gets passed on to each generation, it starts to increase more and more. And that's really what you want to do for your children. And the most practical way to do that is with assets. And an asset is anything that can be converted to cash. So it could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be an ETF, it can be real estate, or even jewelry, whatever you can set up for your children where it can then be converted to cash and then they can take that and they can multiply it. I mean, the example that I just gave with Abraham and Isaac, it says that Isaac planted his seed and he had a 100-fold return in a year. To a 100-fold, which is like not normal for, harvest season. Mm-hmm. So yes, God's blessing was on it, but at the same time, he took from his father what was given to him and he was able to multiply, and our children are going to be able to do the same thing. We just have to give them the tools so that they can accomplish that. And I think something else that's really important about the generational wealth is, a lot of people have 9-to-5 jobs and you can't always pass that on to your kids. Unless, of course, you own the business, but in most cases you don't. So, but what you can pass on to them are things like I mentioned, real estate, or things that you purchase in the stock market, or things that you purchase that can be converted to cash, right? Like any type of asset. And the thing about that is that it's so important to teach your children financial literacy so that when you do put these things in place, they don't blow it when they get it. Because there's also things like UTMA accounts, UTMA, which is essentially a guardianship account where you can, as a parent, open up an account for your child and you have full control over it until they turn a certain age. Most states, it's like 18 to 21. It's whatever the state you live in considers like adulthood. And then at that time, your kid can just walk into the bank and take all of it, and they can start a rock and roll band, or they can, start a business with it. So it's like, listen, $50 a month for 18 years is like 30 grand. Mm-hmm. So can you imagine when you were 18 years old, if your parents were like, hey, we've been saving like $50 a month and here's $30,000.
Right, here you go.
Like, I think sometimes parents are like, oh, if I don't have like $1 million to give them, then it doesn't matter. You know, you have these like huge expectations of what the generational wealth should be. But think about when you graduated high school, like $30,000 is a lot of money, whether it's a down payment on your first, you know, quadplex and you live in one and rent out the other three. And now maybe your parents didn't give you asset, but they gave you a tool so that you could own an asset.
Right.
That now is maybe worth $300,000 or $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of generational wealth is to set your kids up for success so that your ceiling is their floor.
Yeah.
We always want our children to go beyond what we have gone financially, emotionally, relationship. You know, we want them to do better than us. We want them to make an impact in this culture. So the values that we instill in them as their parents, when they go off into the world and they get positions of influence in the medical field, in the education field, maybe they're going to go into politics, whatever it is that they end up doing, the core values that we have taught them are going to now influence the circle of influence that they have.
Right.
So generational wealth is more than just money. It's like core beliefs of the type of impact you're wanting to make.
Yeah.
Money is going to be a culprit that, you know, helps them have levels of influence and networks of people, but how they view money and how they handle it and how they steward it is also something that's going to be passed down from generation to generation.
Right. It definitely is. And I love you hit a lot of points there all at once. Right? So one of the cool things that you were saying about, you know, 18 years, if you're saving $50 a month, that type of thing, when you start something for your kids, you are giving them the gift of time on their investments.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people I talk to who are in their 40s, 50s, sometimes early 60s, and they're like, I don't have anything saved, but I want to retire in 5, 10, 15 years. And it's like, oh, well, I hope you're able to make, you know, almost all the money you want to live on for the rest of your life in the next 5, 10, or 15 years.
They're like, I don't want to be a greeter at Walmart.
Yeah. Right. They don't, or the sandwich maker at the airport, or the Home Depot tool rental person. Like, they don't want that job in their retirement. And yet they somehow want to come up with enough money to live for 25, 30, 35 years in 5, 10, or 15 years. And it's almost impossible. It can be done, but it's a lot because you don't have time for the investment to grow. And when you start something early, whether it's starting a plan for the kids or even just teaching the kids how to start their own things early, you're giving them that gift of, now you have 18 years for this to grow, plus your working life, or now you are an adult and I've taught you how to do it. So now, you know, you're starting day one at 18 or 20 or whatever, whenever they're really kind of launching themselves with the skills, rather than what a lot of us do, which is get started and then screw it up a whole bunch of times. And then by the time we're 35, 40, something like that, we're like, I think I can handle this now.
Yeah.
And that's when we actually get it together and start on the plan. But we've missed 20 or 30 years or more of saving. And good technique, I guess, is what I'm thinking. So, and I also really loved how you said, make your ceiling their floor.
Yeah.
That is just so cool. Great concept.
Come on, let's do it.
Yeah. Great concept. So you have a whole book about this.
I do.
Okay.
Chapter about it. I have a whole chapter on Teach Your Children. Yeah.
Okay. So in the Teach Your Children chapter, what are some of the most important things for us to teach our kids? What do they really need to know?
So, you know, it also depends on like how old they are, because the developmental stages change every so many years. But what I would say is, when, you know, every child's different, but when you feel that they're old enough, I think it's really important to teach them to give. What I would say is, they don't come out of the womb knowing how to share. If anybody has children, you feel me.
Oh yeah.
So usually like around age 4 or 5, they kind of like understand that concept. And there's a couple things that as a parent you can put in place. And one of them is, when Christmas time or Hanukkah time rolls around, you have them pick out one gift that they receive to give away to a foster care family or, children in need, anything like single mom with kids, anything where it's like there's a need and you're able to meet it is a really beautiful thing. The other thing you can do is just simply take them to like Walmart or Target and purposely buy gifts for families in need so they can like pick the gifts out, but they don't get to play with them.
Right.
And you can have a conversation with them and explain to them how it's going to be helping other children who maybe don't have the same financial stability that you do. And so you're wanting to share and give. And I think it's just so important for them to understand that because it helps with kids not be so entitled as they get older. And I think as humans, like we're like our DNA, so to speak, is like we're made to contribute. Like there's something in us where it's like the purpose is to contribute. And if you can teach your kids that at a young age, it really makes a difference. The second thing, of course, is saving. So this comes into play when maybe they get their first job, whether you are giving them an allowance to mow the lawn or wash your car. I'm a really big believer in paying your kids to do things, even if it's like $1, because then they like do an activity or work, so to speak, and they make something from it. And then if they want something, they can save for it instead of just like buying them whatever they want, even though you potentially can certainly like afford to buy them the shoes they want. It's really important for them to have skin in the game. Yeah. And one of the things you can do, if it's something that's more expensive where you're like, oh my gosh, it'll take them all year if I give them $1 a week for like, right. You can do matching funds. Nice. And that's a great motivator where you're like, listen, if you save $100, I will match it with $100. And then we will then go and purchase whatever it is that you want, especially when they get older and technology comes into play and they want the new iPhone or like the new pair of Nikes, the
latest gaming console, those things.
Yeah, like the price point of things that teenagers want is like generally a little bit higher than younger kids. So anyhow, those are my points of like teaching them how to give, how to save, matching funds. And then of course, something that I always encourage parents is there's like this one phrase that I have like very strong feelings about where I'm like, don't ever use this with your kids. Yes. And we can't afford it. Don't ever say it. Okay. Because we'll just
put that out of our vocabulary.
Literally like, boop, take it out of your brain. Yep. Because the truth of the matter is you can afford it. It's just what you're choosing to afford.
Right.
Like we're not going to be buying that this week because we're doing dance lessons for you instead, or we're going out to eat as a family, or I took all your friends to the movie theater. So the thing about children is they internalize a lot because developmentally they're not able to separate necessarily where they end and you begin as a parent. So a lot of their identity is what you say to them. So when you are constantly telling a child that as a parent, their provider, you're not able to afford things, it creates fear instead of abundance.
Yeah.
So that is like one little tidbit. All it is a reframe. It's just reframing. Right.
It really is. You're just saying that's not in our budget, or that's not something we're going to get right now because we're choosing to do.
We're using our money for other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Making it much more about what choices you're making rather than an inability to do something.
Right. Because a lot of things with money is like a choice. And you never want to sort of like have that victimhood thing. Especially when like you have two parents that are like gainfully employed, it doesn't make any sense if like things can't be afforded when like they can, you're just choosing where.
Well, that also helps with when a child sees something new show up and then they're like, well, why couldn't we afford the thing that I asked for?
Right.
You just got shoes. Why didn't I get shoes? It's like, well, you got dance lessons.
Right.
And I need these shoes for work. Therefore, we've chosen to spend for these shoes that I'm required to wear to work. And we've chosen your fun thing is dance lessons. When dance class is over for, this semester or whatever, if you'd rather get shoes, maybe we can choose differently. So yeah, really highlighting that. Yeah.
And it's important too, because, a lot of times money isn't talked about in the home.
Right.
It's like like money and sex. Like,
Can't talk about it.
right. Yeah. So,
supposed to know what you're doing.
I'm just here to talk about money.
Know what you're doing. Be all good at it, but don't admit that you want it and don't talk about it.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
So basically, it's really important to just have conversations about it and normalize it so that there's no fear. Because a lot of times children become adults and they have fear around money because they don't know enough, or they feel like they're inadequate, or, you know, they weren't given the tools they needed to feel safe in that space. But if you teach them to save 10% and, you know, build up an emergency fund, and if you teach them to give, and those principles are in their life growing up, even in small ways, like the one gift from Christmas, or, you know, from mowing the lawn, and then eventually maybe they become a hostess at a restaurant when they're like in high school, like whatever that looks like, it makes a difference. Because I think with kids, what's most important is for them to like be seen and to be heard. And if they feel like you can't afford things, they won't come to you with things that they really need.
That's so true.
So you want there to be open communication about the subject. So when there's a hole in their shoe, they tell you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, we're parents, we're busy, we're running around. And like, if you have boys, they don't care if there's a hole in their shoe. But like, I don't want my kid walking around with a hole in his shoe. So the point is, like, I want them to be able to come to me and tell me when they have needs that have to be met, that involve a financial, you know, input. So that's also part of it with kids, is besides giving and saving, is the open communication.
Yeah, kids are really cagey about some things when they're, it's almost like they're trying to protect their parent. You know, my mom seems really busy right now, so I don't want to tell her about my school project. Or, you know, my shoes are too small, but I feel like we don't have money, so I don't want to bring up that I need new shoes. Or, you know, I hurt my wrist last week, but it's all right. So I'm not going to tell my parent that I need to go to the doctor because I know that it's going to stress them out. You know, it's like they really do want to protect us as parents, and try not to interfere with all the other stuff they feel we have going on. And I love that you bring that up, that they just won't say anything. They'll just hide.
So just creating that safe space, like even if you never teach them how to give and save, creating a safe space so they can ask for what they want is like even more important than everything else.
Yes, that's true. I'm not sure if I could even try to count the number of times I've seen a child ask for something in a store and a parent be angry with them for asking for a toy or whatever.
Yeah, which creates shame. And then they're never going to ask again for things that matter.
Right.
So it's creating it's basically just creating an environment of like what's allowed and what's not allowed. And as a parent, you set the tone because you're their covering, and you're just like, you're instilling in them what you want passed down to their kids and then their kids financially. It's the same thing with like belief systems, which is essentially what we say. It's our words.
Yeah, definitely. So can we go back to this topic of allowance? Because I think allowance is one of those things that parents are split on and uncertain on, and how much do I give and when do I do it, and do they have to do something to earn it, or do they just get allowance because they live here and they can earn extra from chores? Like what's your best advice or suggestions for handling the allowance thing?
So I think there's chores, which is like, you do this because you're part of the family and you're contributing to what happens in this household, which is like making your bed and like doing the dishes and taking out the trash. Like, I'm not paying my kid to take out the trash because I'm just not. But I will give him $5 to read a book. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like case by case basis, and it's what is important to you. But I think there's kind of like non-income producing activities that just like help the household operate. Right. And then there's like the extra. And I feel that the extra, it's okay to pay them because you're essentially their first boss, and you're the first example of what it's like to accomplish a task and then be rewarded for it. And then with that reward, you can do what you please, and you can teach them save, give, invest.
Right.
So it's like a micro of what like adulting is essentially.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I like that concept because there are some things that just need to be done. And you're part of the family, and
So like, I'm not paying you to do the laundry.
I'm not paying you to put your own underwear back in the drawer. Like that, you can handle that, and that's part of living here. Yeah.
Like, I love you, but
Right. But you're old enough to fold your own socks and hang up all your shirts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like that kind of split of there are some things that we do because we all live here and we work together. And then there are extra things that you can get paid for if you want to get paid, more. You can take on those extra tasks. So
yeah, it's kind of like it's core responsibilities versus an allowance system.
Yeah.
Like those are the two things. So you just decide as a parent, like, what are your core responsibilities? And then what are the things under the allowance system, and go from there.
Yeah. I think that's a really easy way to do it. Because then you don't have kids saying, well, I need to get paid for that, for every single thing that happens. That's just, this is part of life. You need to learn how to do it. And
be fair. Like as a parent, like be fair, be kind. Like, I don't really know if mowing the lawn should be a core responsibility. Maybe it is for some families.
Probably depends on your lawn.
Right? If it's 5
my
acres.
lawn, it's a big deal. Like that's a lot of work. So that would be an extra point.
So totally, exactly. Case by case.
Yeah. Case by case. But in a house we used to live in, our lawn was like teeny tiny, like, I don't know, 20 feet by 8 feet, like really not a big lawn. You could just, a few swipes with the mower. And so that might've been that if our kids were old enough at that time, that could have been maybe just a household thing because it wasn't even a big deal. But our lawn right now is ridiculous. And I would never ask my kids to do that without offering to pay them, because it's like a job I could hire a lawn person to do. So yeah, that fully makes sense. I love it. Okay. Any other tips that you want to share about kids and money?
I mean, really just to summarize, the main thing with the generational wealth is to have assets in place that can be converted to cash, and to share your core values with them, because then they will impact this culture, and also their children are going to learn that as well.
Right.
And the power of your words, to use your words wisely when talking about money with your kids, and to just create a safe space for them, and to decide what those core responsibilities are and what you're willing to do with an allowance system, and also incorporating giving and saving as they grow. So when they're adults, it's like second nature.
Right. I love that. That's wonderful. And you just made me think about being a grandparent, because a lot of times as a parent, it's a little harder to have extra to give to your kids or extra to put aside for your kids. So maybe you have to start small and you're just doing, $30 a month or $50 a month or something like that as a parent. But once your kids get launched, and should you become a grandparent, a lot of times that's when you really have a little extra money.
Right.
Because you're not in the middle of trying to raise kids.
Right. You're not in the
you're
not in the thick of it.
Right. Yeah. You can put that money towards the generation, that's coming up.
Yes.
So I think that's, something for people to be thinking about as we're thinking about this concept of, okay, it's me, and then I'm building my kids, but I'm also going to build their kids, or build,
100%.
Yeah. Keep building the generations as long as you're around.
Yeah. And just to like encourage the audience, regardless of like what your family history is, or, if you come from like literal poverty or you don't, or paycheck to paycheck, like none of that matters. It starts with you.
Yeah.
Like you can make a decision and change the trajectory of the financial path of the rest of the people that come from your line.
Yes.
Of your children and their grandchildren and their grandchildren. And it just takes one person to be like, this is what we're doing moving forward. Right. This is what we're going to change with our belief systems, so that our kids and their kids and their kids and their kids are literate in finances
Right.
and how to manage money. And also the perspective of like where God comes into play with all of it as well. Like with their faith and like, you know, where they put their trust.
Yeah. It's anybody can make that decision of how
Totally.
they're going to change their family for the next generation. I love that. I love that. Tell us about the rest of your book. What other chapters can we find in there?
I have a chapter on generational wealth.
Awesome. Perfect.
I mean, it's a finance book. So you've
Sure.
got a chapter on saving and investing, debt, giving, insurance and estate planning, and just all the things. It's good.
Very cool. Yay. All right. Money Handbook. And it's available on Amazon?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much, Samia. This has been fabulous. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah. So Samia's Money Handbook is available on Amazon. If you want to contact her, she can be reached through her website, samiapedalino.com. I'm going to spell it for you. It's SAMIAPEDALINO, or she's on Instagram at Money Handbook. Thank you as well to all of our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Camille Diaz. This show is sponsored by Serenity Financial, a Five Rings financial agency specializing in financial education, life insurance with living benefits, and guaranteed lifetime income. Be sure to follow Money Heart on social media at Money Heart Show and on our website, moneyheartshow.com. Today's money mantra that Samia provided us with is, did you want to give it? Or do you want me to do it?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Take it away.
Today's money mantra is, if you can be trusted to steward money, you can be trusted with anything.
I love it. Thank you.